Hello, very good evening to you all from Baku. I'm Morkan Amashov here, and the main focus of today is, of course, 6th Summit of the European Political Community, which is currently actually drawing to an end in Tirana, Albanian capital. This forum, of course, is one of great significance against the backdrop of very important development. And of course, after the direct talks between Russian and Ukrainian delegations, this forum was meant to clarify some of the key preponderant elements that define today's geopolitical discussion about the war in Ukraine, about to what extent European countries have managed to consolidate a common front, and what does actually we understand by the term Europe. In many ways, the 6th meeting of the European Political Community, in the light of the ongoing discussions about Ukraine currently taking place in Turkey, is meant to show to the world at large that by Europe, we not only understand European Union, but also those European countries which are not members of the European Union. So the sense of European identity, Eurocentrism writ large, the term and the association have been referred to by many analysts today. Today was a very, very busy and packed day from the very beginning. The day started very early when the 47 heads of government and state arrived in the Albanian capital, and they were all warmly received by the Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama. Whilst being received by Albanian Prime Minister, those leaders, responded to the questions posed by journalists. And we remember the Ursula von der Leyen EU Commission President replies to the questions posed to her, and also, of course, Antonio Costa, EU Council President, responded to the questions. The many important statements have been made already, and we had an opportunity to examine and to follow very closely statements, opening remarks made during the first plenary session, wherein the support, indefatigable, unwavering support for Ukraine has been reiterated by many leaders, including British Prime Minister, French President Emmanuel Macron, President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And during those discussions, we have noticed a couple of key sensibilities. One of them was about supporting Ukraine, increasing pressure on Russia, and forcing Russia come to the table. This was a very key element in many remarks that we have heard. Another element worthwhile and worthy of remembering at this juncture, when this forum, this summit actually is drawing to an end, is the concept of Europe being explained by French President Emmanuel Macron and also Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, wherein the key focus was on Europe being, of course, based on the idea, but also in need of expanding eastwards, wherein the Western Balkan nations and also Turkey have been specifically mentioned. What seems to be very clear to everybody that, bearing in mind the original idea, and this was particularly emphasized by EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, the original idea of European political community first emerged in July 2022, and that was just almost immediately after the beginnings of the war in Ukraine. And therefore, when in October the inaugural summit took place in Prague, in Czechia, that was perceived as a new Europe based on a new political identity, a Europe more than European Union in the face of the existential challenge facing the continent. That was the original idea. And then, of course, some other elements have been added to the conceptual core of what means European political community, the issues related to connectivity, European resilience, the necessity of Europe being self-sufficient in terms of its energy credentials and mobility, and also resilience, not just in terms of energy resilience, but also in terms of social cohesion, have been added to the sort of terminological and the theoretical identity of the concept that is designed as European political community. Let's remember that the second summit took place in Chisinau, Moldova. So there was from the very beginning there was the idea of having the one summit in an EU country and the second summit in a European country which is not member of the European Union, and that's the reason why the second summit took place in Moldova. So that's something which is very important. So that from the very beginning there was a sense that the Prague, the first summit, and then Chisinau, the second summit, of course, and then of course a third summit took place as we remember, in Granada, Spain, and then the fourth summit took place in London, the fifth summit in Hungary. So there was a necessity of involving major European countries, but also those European countries which are not members of the European Union. And allow me to remind you that by UK hosting the fourth summit, UK being non-EU member, so that added that extra EU element to the entire cohesion. And today, during the discussions, we heard the necessity of European strengthening Europe's defense capabilities with a specific attention, with a specific importance very manifestly ascribed to the EU accession talks. And we know that today the representatives of France, United Kingdom and EU and some other members of the EU met together, and they also supported Moldova's accession to the European Union. This is one particular element that we have noticed. Some other important developments have taken place today, and one of the fundamental strengths of the European political community is based on the idea that quite often meetings take place on the margins of the summit, with informal meetings taking place and some important decisions perhaps being taken as a result of those meetings. We know that Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan had an opportunity to converse almost immediately after the welcoming ceremony, and we don't know the content of the discussions, but of course it's very clear that they should have discussed the circumstances related to the Azerbaijani-Armenian peace negotiations, that document known as Agreement on Peace and Interstate Normalization, and also prerequisites which are necessary, and they necessary from the perspective of being fulfilled in order for that peace deal eventually being signed. As I, during my earlier comments, mentioned, during the inaugural summit of the European political community, the important agreement was attained involving Azerbaijan and Armenia, with these two countries recognizing each other's territorial integrity, which was a breakthrough moment back in October 2022. And also we know that President Aliyev, during just before the first plenary session, had an opportunity to converse with many world leaders, with many European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, and also EU Council President and EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen as well. So the day was packed in terms of informal meetings, in terms of bilateral meetings involving delegations, and currently, as I'm reflecting on the day's main takeaways, main achievements or main results, Albania's Prime Minister Edi Rama, together with Prime Minister of Denmark, making their closing remarks, and currently Albanian Prime Minister is responding to the question posed to him by the audience.
That follow one the other. What is very important for us is that we have a challenge on the table, an agenda that is very ambitious to conclude all negotiations within 2027. We think we can do it, and the European Commission is there to help us. The member states are there to watch and to make sure that everything is based on the deliveries, and then we'll see. But the momentum is fantastic for the enlargement, for Europe to unite, and we have to take this momentum and go further. And I'm very happy that there is a general feeling that Albania is doing very well, but with these guys, you should do very well every day. It's not that you did very well and you can sit and wait. So we have to do it every day, and we are committed to do it. So I thank you very much, and again, I thank the Prime Minister of Denmark for being so gracious in staying and spending the time to answer the questions. And now I ask your permission to accompany such a special guest to go back home. And we'll see each other very soon. I'm talking about the other Albanian journalists, and don't worry, I'll be very open to answer the questions. Tomorrow here we have a fantastic event, a great forum of investment with a large number of very, very distinguished investors coming from the Middle East, coming from Europe, coming from America. So it will be another great day for Tirana and for Albania. And tomorrow, I'm sure that after the British Prime Minister has left the country, the sun will be back. Thank you.
Yes, the final remarks have been made and finalized. Allow me to remind you that sixth meeting of the European political community brought together leaders from across the continent in Tirana, Albania, under their theme, which is either surprising, but also very much a reiteration of what has been said and discussed across the continent over the past few months. That is the theme of New Europe in a New World, unity, cooperation, and joint action. Of course, during the first few hours of the day, leaders met in a plenary session dedicated to security challenges and shared vision for the future of Europe, with the necessity of Europe being viewed from a wider prism and glance, with other non-EU member countries being taken into account as integral elements of the European identity, being re-emphasized on a number of occasions. It has been said that Europe must succeed for peace in Ukraine and also in the Middle East. We remember very vividly some of the elements entailed in the speech delivered by EU Council President Antonio Costa, and also to a certain extent by in terms of the speech delivered by Ursula von der Leyen, EU Commission President. We heard a specific reference to multilateralism for global trade and prosperity at a time when transatlantic alliance is facing its own existential challenge with US President Donald Trump's attitude towards the unity between the continent and US is being formulated in a completely different way, with the language itself differing sometimes even violently from the original design that used to be very characteristic element of the previous engagements between the continent and the US. Of course, in particular, I think in this context, we remember the remarks made by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, wherein he specifically mentioned that Europe owes a lot to the United States of America, and that United States of America played an important role in the rebuilding efforts in Germany from 1945 onwards. And quite frankly, there is a clear realization as far as the statement, the remarks made by German Chancellor is concerned. During those remarks, he mentioned that United States is pretty much irreplaceable, and Europe will not be able to change US with any new partner, which is, I suppose, the reality that everybody else in that room would have subscribed to. And of course, 3 high-level round tables then took place immediately afterwards, with one of them related to Ukraine specifically, the security challenges emanating from the situation that is currently central to what's happening in the battlefield there in Ukraine. The peace negotiations have been referred to, and also resilience, mobility, and some elements related to connectivity have also been discussed during other high-level round tables. And then there was a final, of course, plenary session, and the very last moment very last, of course, was effectively this Danish Prime Minister and the Prime Minister of Albania delivering their closing remarks. It's worth remembering that actually this one is the 6th summit of the European political community, and the next summit will take place probably as if the schedule, if the proposed schedule is going to be properly implemented in October in Denmark and Copenhagen. Just allow me to remind you that EU political community involves EU member countries and also there's European countries which are not members of the European Union. Therefore, there is probably an unwritten rule in line with which the first one summit takes place in an EU country and the second summit takes place outside the EU. So let's remember the first summit inaugural was in Prague, EU country, and then the second one took place in Chisinau in Moldova, country which wants to become a member of the European Union but is just an EU aspirant country. And the third one took place in Grenada, Spain, member of the European Union. The fourth one took place in the, I think, United Kingdom, which used to be a member of the European Union but currently not a member of the European Union. The fifth one took place in Hungary, member of the European Union, and the sixth one in Albania, which is not a member of the European Union. So and then the next one will take place in Denmark. So there's a logic to this, the host countries, of course, being chosen, and there is a, whatever the political analysts may say about European political community being sort of not being a standing sort of organization, having an evolving structure, not having secretariat, therefore its fundamental strengths being sort of designed around the idea that it provides platform for informal discussions. There's nothing legally binding emanating from it, but that also gives it some maneuverability, flexibility. This is a key argument that has been expressed by many analysts in favor of this sort of structure. But what is very clear to everybody is that in the fullness of time, a European political community will need to assume a more definable shape, and that its evolving structure need to culminate in some sort of institutional arrangement. And if that does not happen in a timely fashion, this congregation may be regarded by some as a failure. So that's a distinct possibility that analysts have been talking about today. So today, if to wrap up what happened throughout the day, it was a great opportunity for bilateral meeting. It was absolutely a fantastic opportunity for European countries to reiterate their unwavering support for Ukraine. It was also a very symbolic moment of many European countries, 47 countries that invited to this summit, standing sort of together and being part of the same family from the prism of Ukraine, because we know that there are differences amongst European countries when it comes to supporting Ukraine. Not all the European countries support Ukraine with the approach which is based on the idea of implementing crippling sanctions against Russia. There are certain differences, but when it comes to fundamental support for Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty, there is a unanimous position maintained by all European countries. Today was very interesting in that regard as well. I vividly recall the press conference, the conference wherein Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev was responding to the questions of different members of different think tanks here in Baku during the ADA policy forum. When he was asked about the fate and the future of the negotiations, he said something quite interesting which deserves reiteration here in this context. And it is very central to the spirit that dominated this European political community, that no country could be legitimately expected to compromise on its territorial integrity. And Azerbaijan is a country which did not compromise on its territorial integrity. That's the reason why it has sort of, because of that zeal, because of that will, because of that determination, it eventually managed to recover its territorial integrity and full sovereignty, with this process being firmly finalized in September 2023. There seems to be one more argument that is being expressed now, that no country could be expected to compromise on its territorial integrity. In the light of the negotiations currently taking place regarding Ukraine, with Americans emphasizing the necessity of sort of recognizing Russian control over Crimea and certain sections of Ukraine, there seems to be fundamental focus on the legality of anything that may emerge as a result of negotiations currently taking place. And I think the European position from that perspective, when it comes to what was said today from leading EU member countries, from the United Kingdom and Turkey, and also other countries, of course, testified to that eventuality. And of course, back to the summit itself and back to its fundamental essentials that dominated it today. Europe's security, the resilience has been competitiveness and economic security, mobility challenges and youth empowerment and many other elements have been discussed very, very, very carefully and very extensively. The next summit will take place in Copenhagen in Denmark. So we have heard many important announcements and of course, as many analysts like to say, whatever is happening now, whatever is happening today, its result probably will be made public at a later stage. So it has been a very interesting day, and we will of course continue to inform you about the updates emanating from this summit and many other related developments happening across the world.